My grandmother came to West Virginia carrying a whole house full of rules from the north of England. But when she wanted to know what winter would do, she watched the mountains. One little woolly worm could tell her which end of winter would bite the hardest. And every foggy morning in August earned a pencil mark on her calendar. I laughed at those marks when I was a girl. Number 12 is why I stopped, so keep count with me. 12 old signs, all of them close enough to find in your own yard, your own trees, or the sky over your roof. At the end, I want your winter forecast. And come spring, we will see which of us had any business predicting the weather at all. Number 1, the woolly worm. You know the little fellow. Black at both ends, rusty brown through the middle, crossing the road in autumn as if he has an appointment on the other side. The old mountain reading was simple. The more black you saw, the harder the winter ahead. A broad brown middle promised a gentler stretch. A narrow one meant you had better bring the wood in early. But there was a finer reading too. If the head end was darkest, the first part of winter would be the cruel one. If the tail carried more black, the worst cold would wait until winter was nearly over. My grandmother could crouch over a caterpillar on the porch boards and study it like a telegram addressed directly to her. People who know insects will tell you its colouring changes with age and growing conditions. Fair enough. Perhaps it remembers the weather it has lived through better than it predicts what is coming. Nan would have said that remembering is how most predicting gets done. Number 2. The persimmon seed. This one requires a sharp knife, a steady hand, and more patience than I naturally possess. You take a locally grown persimmon after it ripens, clean one of the hard seeds, and split it lengthwise. Inside, the pale little plant waiting to grow can resemble one of 3 pieces of silverware. The old reading said a spoon meant deep, wet snow that would need shoveling. A knife meant wind and cold sharp enough to cut through your coat. And a fork promised a mild winter with light, loose snow. I tried this myself one autumn. I cut 3 seeds from persimmons off the same tree. The first held a spoon. The second looked exactly like a knife. The third, after my husband and I argued over it for 10 minutes, was plainly a fork. So one tree predicted a snowy winter, a bitter winter, and a mild winter before supper. The season that followed was perfectly ordinary. A little snow, a little ice, and enough cold to make everybody complain without giving anybody a proper story. The persimmons had wisely covered every possibility. I cannot swear by that forecast, but I still cut a seed every fall. There is no harm in asking. Number 3, the corn husks. Before the corn was shelled or ground or hung to dry, people paid attention to how it came dressed. Thick, tight husks wrapped hard around the ear meant a hard winter. Thin, loose husks meant the cold would be easier. The same idea was sometimes applied to onions and nuts. The heavier the covering, the more protection nature believed it would need. Nan would turn an ear in her hands before she husked it, feeling how hard the green leaves held on. If they fought her all the way down, another armful of wood went onto the winter pile. The old folks saw a wet summer, a heavy autumn, and a hard winter as one long conversation. The corn had heard the first half. They believed it knew how the sentence ended. Number 4, the acorns and the squirrels. If the oak trees dropped more acorns than anybody could sweep, people expected a severe winter. And if the squirrels began gathering early and worked like the bank was about to close, that settled it. Watch the squirrels, Nan would say. They know before we do. Squirrels gather every autumn, and oaks have heavy years for reasons of their own. Still, it is persuasive to see a squirrel cross your driveway with a walnut nearly as large as its head, then return for another. Last autumn one buried a nut in the flower pot beside my kitchen door. I watched him pat the dirt down with both little hands. Then he looked straight at me, as if I were the one behaving suspiciously. I left his nut where it was. If he knows something, I want him on my side. Those are the signs nearest the house: the caterpillar, the seed, the corn, and the squirrel. But the old winter forecast did not stop at the garden gate. For the next 4, you had to look farther into the woods. Number 5, the hornet's nest. One old mountain version put it in a rhyme. See how high the hornet's nest, and you will know how high the snow will rest. A nest high in a tree meant deep snow. A nest built low meant less. The reasoning was that hornets would keep their homes safely above the drifts, having been told the winter forecast by somebody more reliable than the rest of us. I would not advise getting close enough to measure. A general impression will do. No weather prediction improves because you were chased across a field by hornets. The nest hung grey as old paper among the leaves. The old folks only wanted to know whether the hornets had chosen the fence line or the top of the oak. Number 6. The sarvice berries. Some of you call it serviceberry. Around these mountains, you will also hear sarvice. It blooms early, bears dark little fruit, and has been watched for generations. One version from these mountains said a heavy crop of sarvice or other wild berries promised heavy snow, nature setting a larger table because the animals would have a longer, leaner winter to survive. That is the shape of a good many weather signs. Plenty now means hardship later. The mountain gives extra before it takes something away. That was the reading, anyhow. Full branches before winter meant empty ground would be harder to find once it arrived. Older people noticed, and remembered when the snow came. Number 7. The wild geese. Geese going south told you cold was coming. That much was obvious, but their height mattered. Some families said geese flying unusually high warned of a hard winter. A low flight suggested something easier. Others listened to how restless and noisy the flocks were. The more urgent the leaving, the more urgent your own preparations ought to be. There are winds up there we cannot feel. Birds find and ride them. That is explanation enough for some people. For my grandmother, it was the very reason to watch. The birds could feel what had not reached us yet. Number 8. The winter coat. Long before people checked a forecast, they checked the animals. The old reading said an early, heavy coat on a horse or wild animal meant strong cold ahead. Even a rooster's legs were inspected. Unusually thick feathers put winter's warning in the chicken yard. The animals sometimes prepared while afternoons still felt like summer. By the time we felt the cold, the barn had apparently known for weeks. Do they know what is coming, or are they simply better at noticing what has already begun? I do not know. I am the woman who puts an extra blanket on the bed because the floorboards felt colder than usual. I have no room to judge. Now we leave the animals behind. The last 4 signs are stranger. One appeared in a tree that had already finished its year. One was written around the moon. One waited inside a bone. And the last was kept in pencil on my grandmother's calendar. Number 9. A tree blooming twice. One old rule said that when a fruit tree blossomed again in autumn, after its proper blooming was long finished, a severe winter would follow. The tree had spent warmth out of season, the story went, and the cold would come to collect it. Beauty at the wrong time carried a price. An apple blossom in October is lovely but misplaced. Against a tree going bare, it looks less like spring than a message delivered to the wrong address. My grandmother never trusted anything that arrived dressed for the wrong season. Number 10. A ring around the moon. A pale ring around the moon meant weather was moving in. In winter, people read it as snow. Some counted the stars visible inside the ring and said that was how many days remained before the storm. This sign has more underneath it than most. The ring is made by moonlight passing through ice crystals high in thin clouds. Those clouds can arrive ahead of a weather system. So the moon is not causing the storm, and it is not truly predicting one. It may simply be showing you the first edge of it before the rest reaches your roof. That distinction would not have interested Nan in the least. Coming or already begun, she'd say. Bring the washing in. Number 11. The goose bone. Here is one almost nobody checks anymore. After a goose or another game bird was dressed and eaten in autumn, the breastbone could become a winter almanac. A pale, clear bone promised a mild season. A dark or cloudy one warned of hard cold. Other versions divided the bone into sections, reading the front for early winter and the back for what would come later. It is a severe little forecast, hidden inside the supper you have just finished. Families held it to the lamplight and decided how much wood to stack. A forecast read after supper. Plain, practical, and a little grim. People used what they had. A caterpillar crossing the porch, a seed on the cutting board, a bone left from dinner. Weather information was everywhere if you knew how to ask for it. Number 12. The August fogs. The old rule in parts of these hills said every foggy morning in August meant one snowfall in the winter ahead. Not inches, not storms. One fog, one snow. So people kept count. My grandmother marked them on the kitchen calendar in pencil. Just a short line in the corner of each foggy day. I remember standing at the window while the mountains disappeared, the porch wet, and the whole road gone white, and hearing the scratch of her pencil behind me. I thought she was keeping track of the fog. I did not understand that she was counting snow. One particular year, the marks added up high. Through December and January, she crossed them out, one by one, whenever snow covered the road. February went. March softened. The first flowers came up beside the porch, and everybody decided winter was finished. There was one pencil mark left. I remember pointing it out because I thought, at last, I had caught her. She looked at the calendar, looked at the flowers, and said nothing. That night the temperature fell. By morning those flowers were bent under a clean white snow, the porch steps had disappeared, and every branch on the mountain was outlined in it. Nan came into the kitchen in her slippers. She took the pencil from the drawer and crossed out the final mark. She never looked at me. That made it worse. Now, I cannot prove to you that every fog became a snowfall. I was a girl, and memory likes a good ending every bit as much as weather does. But I remember that last mark. I remember those flowers under snow, and I remember the sound of that pencil. So let me ask you, and I mean it, has nature ever warned you what was coming before any forecast did? And when it turned out to be right, did you let yourself believe it? Or did you call it coincidence and carry on? Tell me the sign your family watched. Not the famous one. I want the little local one nobody 2 counties over has ever heard. Because I do not think the old folks believed they controlled the weather. They knew better than that. Weather ran the mountains, and everybody living here arranged themselves around it. What they had was attention. They noticed tightened husks, high geese, and a ring around the moon. They held those small observations together until the world seemed to be saying something. Sometimes it was wrong. 3 persimmon seeds gave me 3 winters, and not one had the decency to be interesting. Sometimes a ring around the moon really did mean snow was already walking toward the house. And once, when I was a girl, the last pencil mark on my grandmother's calendar waited until the flowers came up, and then winter came back for it. So what is your count? How many of these 12 can you check where you live? Write them down. Woolly worm, persimmon, corn, acorns, hornets, berries, geese, coats, blossoms, moon, bone, and fog. Make your own forecast and keep it somewhere safe. Come spring, we will compare notes, and I will tell you whether my persimmon managed to choose just one piece of silverware this year. The Weatherman can have the satellites. I'll keep one eye on the mountains. Knock on wood on your way out.